Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's about noon, so I'm going to say good afternoon. Very glad to have you here and see everyone. My name is Marcia Doherty Baker. I have had a job change. Formerly, I was at the University of Nebraska College of Law, where I was the Associate Professor of Law Library and Access Services Librarian. And about 2 months ago, I hopped campuses, and I am now on City Campus, and I am the Assistant Director for Academic Technology and ITS, which is Information Technology Services. So I'm still in technology, been in technology for a long time, but I'm just working with all of UNL instead of with the law school. So I am very pleased to be here and talk to you about basic technology competence for lawyers. And I'm going to apologize up front because I keep saying competency, and I believe the correct pronunciation is competence. I should know this. I was a judge at the adult spelling bee last week, and I had people with their smartphones going, wait a minute, you guys use the plural, you know, not the singular. So I'm going to try and get it right. It's competence. And if I don't, you know, then have a drink on me kind of thing. So anyhow, glad you are here. The way that today's program is structured is very interactive, so to speak. So everybody should have a handout, and I'm hoping you have a draft document that says Basic Technology Competence Checklist for Lawyers. We're going to be using this today. This is kind of our textbook of sort. It says draft because it is a draft. It's put out by the Lawyerist, and the author is Sam Glover. Mark it up. We can get you more copies if you want. Mine is all marked up in red and blue and various other colors. You have a handout, which is a list of resources and links, which I have found useful in presenting and preparing for this presentation. They're also a nice resource, and I wanted to make sure that you had those. And then the other thing is the PowerPoint slides. So you can go ahead and take notes. I know we're doing this live. Did you not get those? Okay, hang on. Sarah. Okay, Sarah will get you some. Oh, you didn't print those? You will get the PowerPoint after the fact off the website. There's a link there, and we're going to take a look at that, and I'll show you how to download stuff. Anyhow, so you can take notes, and you have all the information that you need. Okay, now the other thing is, if you're like me, you have a question during a presentation, and you don't write it down, and you forget, and then at the end you're like, I had a question, I don't remember, it doesn't seem relevant. If you have a question, by all means, raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and talk about it. The program is broken into 3 different sections, and so if it relates to that particular section, by all means, ask. I love questions. I've been a librarian for a long time, and it makes me happy when people say, ooh, I have a question, and I go, ooh, I can help. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Oh, and I'm going to move between PowerPoint and the web. So most of the web pages I want to show you are loaded. Are ready to go, but I am going to show you how to do some searching, so we're going to do that live and together. Okay, so we're talking about competence and what competence is. And so what I did is I used my dictionary on my laptop to go ahead and find out what the definition of competence is. Whenever somebody asks me to grade something or judge something or review it, I always want to know, well, what is the scale? What do I have to judge this against? That helps me understand and be aware of what I'm looking for. And so the definition of competence, according to my MacBook Pro, is the ability to do something successfully or efficiently. I personally like that definition because for me sometimes competence sounds like it's got to be perfect. And this is implying that you need to know how to do something successfully or efficiently. And we all know that sometimes success and efficient aren't perfect, but we're doing the best we can with the tools that we have at hand. So that's our definition today of what competence is. And then we're going to use that throughout the whole presentation. So the big question is, how does this relate to the legal field? Why has this become such a big deal that we're talking about it? This is a big question, and we are going to get started on it, but I want to give you a little bit of background before we go there on why basic tech competence for the legal field is important. So you have your Lawyerist guide. Feel free to mark it up. Like I said, we're going to use that. We're going to work through this. We're not going to be able to cover all of the topics on this guide. So some of it is going to be homework for you. So what I have done when I was looking at it is I marked all the things I knew I could do for sure. I put question marks by the ones I knew I needed to follow up on, and then like I starred the ones like I have no clue, right, what that is kind of thing. So go ahead and do that. That way you can grade yourself and you'll know what to work for. And then as you have questions, we'll get started. My contact information is also available, so feel free to email me or contact me after the fact with questions. So we are now in a new normal. I know we keep talking about the new normal with everything that we do in life, but the fact is that we are in a new normal and that the ABA Model Rules of Professional Conduct have been updated thanks to the ABA Commission on Ethics 2020. And that's really what is sparking this discussion of competence and how to be a good lawyer with competence in regards to technology. So we're going to start this conversation with what those rules are and how that's going to affect the rest of our presentation today and the practice of law. So the Model Rules of Professional Conduct were updated by the ABA Commission on Ethics recently, and this commission's challenge was to study the issues, obtain critical feedback from attorneys, and if necessary, propose changes to the model rules, which they did. The commission's work was guided by three principles: protecting the public, preserving the legal profession's core values, and maintaining a strong, independent, and self-regulated legal profession. And this is from commentary from Inside Counsel. And so what we have out of that are the two rules that really touch on technology. Model Rule 1.1, which is competency, stating that lawyers should be aware of basic features of technology, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. And Model Rule 1.6, which is confidentiality of information. So lawyers should make reasonable effort to prevent disclosure or access of sensitive information. So examples of this include an email to the wrong person, a hacking incident due to lack of security, or a client's information being posted online by staff or attorney. Those are kind of the basic examples of how this has happened with the breach. So in a nutshell, lawyers have a duty to know how technology works and to maintain client information. Really, this is no different. Same thing happened with telephones, with cordless phones, with fax machines, photocopiers. So this is just a new set of technology parameters in an issue that's been going on for quite a while. So I know some people are still not convinced that technology is here to stay and that it pertains to them, and that's okay. We all have differing love and hate relationships with technology. And so I have three examples of why it is very important that lawyers be aware of technology and how it works. Because quite frankly, if you don't know what's out there, it is going to come back and bite you, and it can bite pretty good. So my first example is estate lawyers. So I've done some research and presentations on digital assets for estate planning, and this has become a huge deal. As more and more of our electronic records are online only, there is no print. When was the last time you got your print statement from the bank, right? Everything is online for the most part. There's really no paper to go through. So understanding how digital assets live and also what type of electronic paperwork is out there is very important. This includes electronic accounts and access to those. You do not want to be accessing something after the fact and get in trouble for that, for unauthorized access to an electronic account or a computer. The other thing that pertains to this is there's a number of people who are actually drawing revenue from online sources only. So for instance, if you're somebody who blogs quite a bit, or you have a website and you have ads on your website or your blog, you're generating ad revenue, which can be taxed, and it's an income, right? If you don't understand how a blog works, or the fact that people could go ahead and have ads that are generating revenue, this could be a huge issue for people who are doing digital asset planning. The next group who have been affected the most, probably the most visually and out there in the media by technology, are family lawyers. This is huge. Social media is probably one of the first places people go to find out where somebody is, to look at the pictures, to look for status updates. There's a whole lot of icky stuff that happens on social media when it comes time to look at family law issues. Also, you have shared documents, such as shared calendars, a Google Calendar that everybody can access, so we know who has visitation rights when, and shared documents. Many times there's one electronic document that's there and everybody has access to it. And finally, this is a huge deal for our state in Nebraska. We have the solo practitioners. Many of our students are graduating. They want to go back home. They want to be in rural Nebraska practicing, or in the Midwest. And one of the most efficient ways to practice as a solo practitioner is with cloud computing, which means you need to understand how cloud computing works. The need for Wi-Fi and multiple devices being attached to that Wi-Fi, and we're going to talk about Wi-Fi and how free isn't free. And then also the need for online conferencing for distance education, similar to what we're doing here, but also being able to do video conference or distance conferencing with your clients, with your colleagues, with the courts. So this becomes a bigger issue, and it's not so much about how do you practice law without technology, it's that technology is part of how you practice any business anymore. So understanding how those works, those different types of technology work is very important. Okay, so if you would like to turn to page 2 in the checklist, we are going to get started with basic computer competence. Now, if I had time, I would like to have coffee with the author of this and find out exactly how he put items on this list, because I've got a couple things we're going to talk about that aren't on this list that I think are basic tech competence items. But this is his list, and he's the one who made it, so we're going to go with it. But in basic computer competence, a number of the items that are on here are things that, in theory, everybody should be able to do. And I say that because computers have been in the workplace for 30-some years, 40, depending upon where you used to work. We used to have mainframe computers. We had a lot of dumb terminals that would do word processing and basic skills for us, papers, forms, that kind of thing. And the internet went public in 1994, so it's 22 years old. So we have had technology for a long time. Now, the rate at which it has evolved and changed our life is crazy. I mean, it's exponentially grown more than anybody could ever expect. But it's here to stay, and it's been here for longer than we expect. The thing that's really changed how we use technology is the easy-to-use handheld devices, if you have a phone, tablet, that kind of thing, and Wi-Fi. Because of that, we're no longer tethered. We no longer have to sit in front of a terminal to do our jobs, right? So in my bag, I have a MacBook Pro and I have an iPhone. And I could take these anywhere I want today because they're in my bag. And I have more computing power in my backpack that I'm walking around with than NASA was using back in the 60s to get people up to the moon, right? I mean, it's pretty amazing the power that we have now. But that being said, this is a skill that we've had for a long time, and people are really starting to understand that it's part of how we do business. So these basic skills that are listed are a foundation for how we use technology in the workplace and at home. Now, I want to mention, if you don't know how to use something or if you don't understand what it's called, that's okay. There's been many days, many meetings the last 2 months, especially when I meet with our programmers and our networkers, where I have been writing down acronyms. When I get back to my desk, I have a workstation, I go ahead and I use Wikipedia to find out what these acronyms mean, because I think I know what they mean, and then I go ahead and take a look and I go, oh, they were talking about something completely different than what I thought, right? So if you don't know what it is, it's okay. There's a lot of acronyms out there that sound the same. There's a lot of technology that has various meanings depending upon who you're talking to. And so Wikipedia is a great source, and we're going to go ahead and use Wikipedia today to find out what that is. That's basically your encyclopedia. So instead of looking at Britannica or World Book, you go ahead and use Wikipedia. We're also going to use YouTube. What I really like about YouTube is it's a resource that in under 2 minutes, you can watch a video on how to do something. Now, I know that sounds silly, but I've used YouTube to learn how to knit. Again, I learned how to knit a long time ago, and I needed some stress relief, so I thought I'd do it again. Also, funny enough, we had a pickup truck that the handle broke, and I knew we could fix it. And after watching a YouTube video, we went to the hardware store, got the part, and fixed it. Saved myself some money. And also, you know, taught my husband how to use YouTube. So it is a very useful resource. Now, I'm not saying it's something you want to cite, right, in your law review articles, that kind of thing. But it's a really good place to get started. It gives you some ownership, and it also has a variety of videos, depending upon what helps you when you learn, that you can pick up these skills pretty quick. So we'll go ahead and use those. So let's go back to competence, the ability to do something successfully or efficiently. And we'll go ahead and get started. So the list of things that I want to discuss on here are the bilingual skills for Mac or PC. And, you know, everybody uses different types of technology. So I'm going to try and keep this very broad. I know that some people are coming in with an iPhone, some have a Droid, some have a whatever. Some people like Dell, some like PC, HP and some like Mac. So we're not going to talk about the specifics of each operating system. What we're going to talk about is broadly how you use the technology. So Mac and PC skills, it used to be you had to pick one or the other. And anymore, it's really about being able to use both, being familiar with both. They both have keyboards. They both use mouses at some point. Everybody's using Microsoft Office. Doesn't matter if you're a Mac or a PC person, you still know how to use a spreadsheet, how to create a Word document, that kind of thing. So a lot of the things that we do on a computer, it doesn't really matter the hardware that you're using. It's about the software and being able to use it. So when I say bilingual, it's understanding that some things are going to look a little bit different on a Mac than a PC. They might be called something different, a file or a start, that kind of thing. Now, touch and type have become more prevalent in our world. I actually have a little cousin whose son, every time he sees a computer or a screen or a monitor, he just goes over and he starts swiping. He just assumes every TV out there is swipeable, right? And so there's handprints, like as tall as he is. He just thinks you swipe everything. That's normal to him. Everybody else, we look at it and we go, where's the remote? Or, oh yeah, I think I can touch that, right? Now, if you're at the airport, obviously you walk up and you touch the kiosk because you know you want to go find coffee before your flight, or you need to know where the restroom is. So we understand when we look at something that it's touch or type. Those are skills that everybody is starting to get used to, and things that we understand how to use. Doesn't mean we always like it, but they're out there. So the touch versus type is something you're going to see. Computer, obviously like this, you're going to be typing. If you have a device like your iPad or your Kindle or your phone, you're probably touching. So that's what that means. And, you know, those are things you know how to do, so mark them off your list, right? You know what you're doing. Basic computer skills follow along on this. This is your search and find, your start menu, your navigating, your system files, that kind of thing. That's really important. It's kind of like when you say, if somebody's trying to give you directions someplace you're familiar with, you might not know the street names, but if they tell you, oh, it's over by the Capitol, you're like, oh yeah, I know where that is, right? I never remember the actual address to this building, but I know it's just to the west side of the Capitol. It's the same kind of thing when you're using different computers. You might not know exactly what it's called, but you understand how it operates, and that's important. Okay, so the next couple things on here, in particular this Word doc, we're going to go ahead and do that together. So I have a video ready to go, and I'm going to go ahead and play the video for you, and then I'm going to talk to you about how to find such video. Now this is pretty short. It's 1 minute and 40 seconds. We probably won't watch the whole thing, but this is one of the most popular questions that I get. How do I convert a Word document to a PDF? So let's go ahead and watch this. This is YouTube, just a video from them.
How to convert Word to PDF. If you want to convert a Microsoft Word document to a PDF document, simply do this by first clicking on File on the left and going down to Save As. And once you're here, you're going to open up the drop down, find PDF on that, and you can just publish it standard or minimum size if you want to save it as a smaller file. Right now we'll just do standard, and you're going to click on Save. And now you have to give it a few seconds to convert the document. As you can see, now we converted to PDF document. Very quick and simple. If you, for whatever reason, want to convert your file using a converter that you can find online, that's fine. There are many good ones, however, just be careful that you're not signing up for one that you don't have to pay for, because you should never have to pay for file conversion from Word to PDF. I've linked a few of the more reputable sources that don't make you pay in the description. That's it. That's it.
Okay, so that was 1 minute and 29 seconds, and he showed you exactly how to do it. Using a screen capture, took the mouse, went File, Save As, and walked you through it. Now, if you were on your own computer, it'd be much easier to see. I mean, this is tiny up here, so I realize that's hard. The other reason I wanted to show you this video is he gives you a nice little heads up, like, hey, this is free. You don't have to pay for this. Don't sign up for one of the online sources. This is already an option in your Microsoft Office suite that you have. So that's a nice reminder too. Because sometimes I think we go, oh, well, I'll probably just have to pay for it. Or if I go online, I can find it, and if I have to pay for it, so be it, right? Not the case. So I really appreciate that this video is easy to look at. The audio, in my opinion, is kind of a challenge, but we are also using speakers. But you can watch this as many times as you wanted to learn how to do this. Now, if you didn't like that, on this right-hand column over here, there's a bunch of other videos on how to convert Word to PDF or PDF to Word. And you can see that some of them, like this first one here, is going to be 9 minutes. This next one's 3 minutes, right? So depending upon how much time and effort you want to put into this, you can go ahead and find the resources that you need. So how exactly do you look for a YouTube video? Well, I'm going to open up a new tab here in our browser, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did this. The internet is wonderful in that it has a ton of information. I mean, if you ever look at the amount of hits you get back when you put in a search term, it's amazing. That being said, that's a lot of stuff to shuffle through, and you're all very busy people. So try and be as specific as what you can when you're doing your search. So I want YouTube, and I want Office, make sure I spelled that right, yep, 365. Actually, you know what, let's go back. Let's do YouTube, Word doc to PDF, right? That's what I'm looking for. How do I do a Word doc to a PDF? And the first few things I see here are going to be ads. And you know I can see this because see free Word PDF converter, I don't want that, that's an ad, that's an ad. What I'm looking for is YouTube. And you go down a few, and here it is. Here's a YouTube video. This is from 2008. Here's one from 2013. And if I click on that, there's an ad. So let me show you how to skip ads. See this right here? Skip an ad. That'll save you a bad ad.
Word to PDF.
And there's our video.
Convert a Microsoft Word document to PDF.
Okay, so questions about finding videos in YouTube? YouTube has some interesting videos, I will warn you now, but it is also probably the biggest warehouse of tutorials on how to do stuff out there, and many times you're going to find tutorials by actual companies. So for instance, let me show you this here. We're going to talk about the Legal Technology Resource Center by the ABA. Very good place to go. They're listed on the resources here. They actually have a YouTube channel, and you can find that right here. Oops, let me go up a little bit higher so you guys can see that. And so the ABA, with the Legal Technology Resource Center, has created their own videos that they post on YouTube. And you can go ahead and watch them here. These are great. I highly recommend that you take a look at some of these. These Legal Technology Resource Center webinars are really useful. They're great things to learn. Yes, sir.
Would you say that YouTube is pretty safe as far as if you go to YouTube and you look at YouTube, you're not going to be picking up a virus?
You should not. No, the nice thing about YouTube is it's hosted outside your computer. So it's going to be very similar to going to CNN and watching a video on CNN. YouTube prides itself on making the most video media available to everybody out there that it can. They can't take the risk that people are going to pick up viruses or get spam because they visited their site. The only challenge you'll have about using YouTube if you happen to be using a network that blocks YouTube. So for instance, if you're anywhere near a K through 12 school, they always block YouTube. Facebook, YouTube, a couple other websites are going to get blocked on those type of Wi-Fi networks. But to go to YouTube and search for something, no, you're not going to have a challenge unless you mistype something. You might find a video you didn't think you were looking for. Once you're in YouTube itself, it has a search bar right here. So it's going to tell you where exactly you are. This one is saying this is the official YouTube channel of the American Bar Association Legal Technology Resource Center, and it gives its mission. So you know you're right there. If you wanted to search YouTube itself, you go to youtube.com. They have a search box, and you can go ahead and search anything you want there. It depends upon the browser that you're using, but they're all going to pass through. So if you're using Google, Bing, Yahoo, and you do your search up here, if you're putting YouTube in the front, you're going to pull up those YouTube videos. Yeah, and I have yet to hear of anybody picking up anything icky from going to YouTube. Like I said, they're so big, they don't want that, and so they have staff in place to make sure that that's fine. There's also a lot of I won't say a lot. There's also hoops to jump through before you can upload your videos to YouTube. So you have to make sure that there's a certain type of video and that you've converted a certain way to make sure it's safe to actually go there, and then they verify everything as well. Yeah. So anybody who has a channel on here, they've already done a lot of that work. Yeah. Good question, though. Yeah. Okay. Questions about finding YouTube videos or using YouTube? Is anybody using YouTube? A little bit, kind of, sort of? Okay. I've used it for a variety of different tutorials, like I said, that I needed to know how to do. I really like their tech ones like this. Microsoft also has a really good resource center, and it's listed in the resource guide. But the Microsoft Office Training Center, and I have that highlighted right here, if you go ahead and do that, what's really nice about it is it doesn't matter which version of Microsoft Office you're using and which type of computer. You select it. You say, I'm using a PC, and I've got, Office for Macs 2013, and then that's the only resources you're going to see. So if you're still using a different version than the current one that's out there, you can go back and get the FAQ or the self-help for that. Okay, so the other things that come into Word docs are scanning multiple docs into one and adding hyperlinks. And these are big questions that a lot of people have. Scanning multiple pages into a PDF, you have to have Adobe on your computer to do that if you're going to use your computer, and you basically just put those all in one. It's like putting multiple things in a folder. If you have a copier, that's a copier, scanner, fax machine, it's pretty easy. You put those all in there, and you can bunch them together that way. And then adding hyperlinks, this really depends upon what you're using, but that's pretty easy to do. When you're using something, you're online and you've got a YouTube, so if I wanted to email this link to everybody, I would go ahead and highlight that, copy, and then I could paste it into an email, or I could paste it into a Word document, and it's automatically going to go ahead and be a linked URL for the users on their end. You might not see that on your end. Once you drop that URL in and you hit space, it should turn blue and become a link, which means that you're seeing it linked on your side. And if you're emailing it out, most of the time links are going to go through, but depending upon what type of email service they're using, it might not come through in their inbox. It might go to junk. So be aware if you're emailing to military and some government. Some of your emails, if they have a lot of links in it, might come through as spam. You might want to pick up the phone and say, hey, by the way, did you get that link? If that's the case, you might want to be saving things as a PDF. As a resource document, put all those links in like an annotated document where you explain what they are, save it as a PDF, and then attach that to the email. And then that way it'll get through your spam filters. Okay, and then printers, scanners, and hardware. Those are things that you need to be aware of. One of the biggest issues that we find with hardware, in particular printers, and then also if you're hooking up other hardware like your phone to charge it or some of these other devices, plug and play, that's what that's called when you just plug it in and it works. Plug and play is great, but it's not always secure. So if you're going to be adding hardware to your system, if you're going to be putting in a new printer and you think you're just going to plug it in and use it, make sure you take a look at how you need to secure that device so you're not opening it up on a network and you're not being compromised. So for instance, if students decide they're just going to hook up printers at random, or if you have staff who are just going to hook up those printers, because the hardware that's out there can talk to the network, and if they're not secure, they can basically be an open door for people to come into your system. And on your system, if you have sensitive information from your clients, you don't want that back door to be open. So something to be aware of on that one. Okay, so let's flip the page to basic internet skills. And once again, competence is the ability to do something successfully or efficiently. So the first question that's on here, and I kind of giggled when I saw it because the question, or the first skill was know where your email is stored. And I was like, well, it's stored in the cloud. I mean, I don't think any of us are probably using a system where our email is actually downloaded onto our computer. And some people might still be. But for the most part, most offices have moved to some type of email system that is available on the cloud. So Microsoft 365, if you're using Microsoft Office, this is just part of it. As you update, every time you update and move to a new system, you get new features. One of them is going to be Microsoft 365, which is really nice. but it's on the cloud. And that means that you can get it on your computer, you can get it on your phone, anywhere else that you go. But realizing that your email is not actually on the device you're using is kind of a scary thing. Like all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, so who else has access to that, right? So who actually has my email? So that's something to be aware of. Take a look at the email client that you're using and ask those questions and find out exactly who's hosting your email, where it's located, and who has access to that. But also knowing how to search your email is important. Now, I use Microsoft 365 for our email. I'm using it on a Mac, and sometimes I use the web browser or the web version, and sometimes I actually use the mail client on my Mac. They both have good and bad features. I don't always like the way that they sync and how they search for email. So knowing the options that you have on your device is also very important. If you want to go through the web for everything, that's fine, but you can't usually have both open. They don't sync very well. But there's good and bad things to that. But learning how to search your email is important. And then also learning how to put emails in folders, how to organize that. This is important in your email inbox because if you move to cloud computing, you're going to want to have cloud software system that integrates with your email. And if you learn how to manage your email in your email system first, it's easier to do that migration into a cloud. Because in a cloud, if you're using the cloud software, you're going to have multiple people maybe sharing emails on a project. So learning how to manage your email in your inbox is the first step. And then once you learn how to do that, it's going to be easier to migrate to cloud. Okay, does everybody use email? Pretty much everybody's using it? Okay. I think for the most part, email now is a standard practice. Not that we all like it, but it's a good way to document what's going on. Okay, so let's talk about downloading information briefly. And so this one, I'm going to use the example of today's program because you can actually download the documents from today's program, and you can also download the PDF registration form. So I thought we'd use this as our example. So say there's something you want to download. Most are going to say it's downloadable, or it's available for download, and it's going to be blue and have this link. So you can see here when I put the hand on it, the cursor becomes a hand, which means you can do something with that. And when you click on it, most of the time in your browser, it's actually going to open it up in a new tab. So it's just going to have it there available for you, which is really nice. That's just kind of a view only. But if you actually want to download something, you have to tell the browser you want to do that. And this is where our technology is trying to be more efficient for us. So here in your right-hand corner, you have these little icons. We're actually kind of opening up a small Adobe file within this web browser. And you can see you could go ahead and print it if you want. When you hover over one of those icons, it's going to tell you what it does. This feature right here is how you download it. So if you really wanted to download this document, you'd actually have to tell the computer, yes, I want to download it. What it's going to do then is open a mini screen saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and download this. Where do you want it? Most computers, when you say you want to download something, it's going to have a download folder, and it's going to drop everything in the download folder. If you don't want it there, you can change it. It's your computer. You can do what you want with it, so to speak. But that's where it's going to go. The one thing about when you download documents, take a quick glance at that title. There's nothing worse than downloading a bunch of stuff and you can't remember what it was called. Or if everything has the same title, it just is going to save over itself. Okay, so I've downloaded things where it says document. It's just saved as a document. And I've done a couple of these realizing when I got to the fifth one that I just basically downloaded 5 things, but I've only got one item because it kept downloading over itself. So take a look at that title right there. This is telling me it's going to download to the save file. And if I click OK, it's going to go ahead and do it. And you can see I had a little arrow come here, and it's telling me that it's been downloaded. Okay? That's pretty much how you're going to download stuff off the internet. Now, a lot of the websites that you might be using, in particular the court's website, they have forms available. I know the Nebraska Supreme Court Judicial Branch website has all of the files and the forms that people can download. They're going to be as Word documents or as PDFs. So more and more places are providing forms that way. Some PDFs are actually, there are forms that you can actually fill in, which are really nice. Others, you just get the form. So it kind of depends upon what you have there. what your needs are. Questions about downloads? All right, so let's see what's next on the list. So cloud computing. I've mentioned cloud computing a few times. That's a term that's out there. There's books written about this. There's seminars given on it. But what exactly is cloud computing? Well, I decided to use Wikipedia for this one. So you can see what Wikipedia looks like. Like I mentioned earlier, Wikipedia is like an online encyclopedia. The nice thing about Wikipedia is it's crowdsourced, which means there are people who actually are editors to Wikipedia and they update on demand. So you don't have to wait for that end of the year edition to the encyclopedia to come out in print. It's going to be updated as things are happening. The nice thing about it is it also kind of harnesses the background information on something. So cloud computing is an internet-based computing that basically shares all the resources out there and provides them remotely. So everybody has access to it. So websites are a good example, kind of how cloud computing works. There's one website, everybody around the world can access it from any device they want. Okay, it's kind of a similar setup to how cloud computing works. But cloud computing is something that's locked down and you have to have access to. So your Gmail. Is anybody using Google Gmail for your email? That's a cloud computing resource because you have your email in there. You've got your Drive, which is where you can store photos, PDFs, you can create documents. It has a number of things in there, your calendar, you can share that calendar with people. So that is considered a cloud computing resource if you're using Gmail, whether you realize it or not. And typically there's more features in the cloud than you realize, and until you need them, you don't always know they're there. So when you start to look at, oh, should I go to cloud computing or not, you're going to be very rich in resources. The one thing to start asking is who has access to it, who's hosting it, and how secure is it. Now, for instance, Google's been around for a long time in the tech world, but they also have been known to kill off items that are not successful. So I don't think they're going to kill off their Gmail or anything, but they have been known to get rid of things. So if you're looking at cloud computing, there's a number of resources out there, in particular for legal cloud computing software. And if you need those resources, they are available. But this explains what the cloud is. The one thing I like about this is it has a visual of how the cloud works. I appreciate that. I'm a visual person. It kind of explains how this works. You can see it in action. And if you continue down on this entry, what I really like is this gives you an explanation of it. It gives you a history of cloud computing. So it goes all the way back to the origins of the term. Basically, it was a bunch of networkers who were trying to explain what it was, and they used the cloud as it's all overhead. Everybody has access to it. And then you get your history. It talks about the different types of cloud computing that are out there, gives you references, and then it talks about security and privacy. This is a big deal. You want to make sure your client's information is safe. So Wikipedia is a really good place to get started on that to help explain what it is. Now, for the legal world, if you're more interested in using cloud computing, the Legal Technology Resource Center has a whole section on cloud ethics opinions in the United States. And some states are very specific on what they want for cloud computing and how it should be used. There's a nice definition here of what cloud computing is. You can go ahead and review that. It's software as a service. And then it gives you a state, it gives you a map of all of our states, and then it'll tell you the opinion that each state has on whether you can use cloud computing or not as a legal professional. So this is a very helpful place to go and to see what other states are doing, and also take a look at those opinions, so if you're interested in that. Now there's other options. The Bar Association has resources out there. There's also a lot of legal software providers that are cloud-based that you can go ahead and do a trial. And I would highly recommend doing the trial before you commit to anything. Okay, so browsers, bookmarks, and your history, which also relates to search engines. I kind of put those there on purpose. So as you look down here, some of the things on this list talk about browsers. And so what exactly is a browser? Well, you have a search engine. Excuse me, let's go back. You have a browser such as Firefox. We're using it right down here. You can see Internet Explorer. And these are the gateways basically to the internet. And your browser is going to have different options that you can use to do things. Like I have all these different tabs open. I'll show you that. I have multiple tabs up here open. That's a feature of this browser. You can search within the browser itself, so you don't actually have to go to like yahoo.com and do a search off that page, or google.com. You can go ahead and search right there. Very important to realize that you have those features, and you can also add those on. Looking for my next page of notes, excuse me. The one thing about using the internet and browsers that's really nice is it will actually save what you're doing for you. And some people like the convenience of having your history saved when you're using the internet. They like having passwords saved, that kind of thing. Personally, I think that's a security breach. If your computer gets in the hands of the wrong people, they're going to have all your passwords. They don't even have to bother remembering them. You're going to get logged in automatically. And people can go ahead and take a look at your history and see all the different places that you have been. So one thing to think about when you're using a computer is how often you want to clean that history and delete those bookmarks or update those because they're there. Now, your search engines that you're using, so for instance Google or Bing, Yahoo, they all have advanced search features, and that will save your time. There are also ways you can go back and look at older versions of websites. So I want to show you the Wayback Machine. Excuse me. This is an internet archive, and this is very helpful if you're looking for something you know you saw a while back ago. It's also a good way to go out and find information. Most websites only keep 90 days worth of current information out there, so it can really be hard to track down stuff that happened in the past. But this is the Internet Archive, and basically in the very beginning they started taking snapshots of websites that are out there. So you can go ahead and take a look. It's a rough estimate of what's out there. So let's go ahead and see what Nebraska State Bar website looked like. And if you see blue bubbles, you can go ahead and look at those. And this here is your timeline. I'm just going to show you all the different variants. So let's go back to 1997. Excuse me, 1997. Looks like this might have been the first time it came live. And didn't have one back then. Oh, there it is. So this is what it used to look like. So the reason why the Wayback Machine and learning how to look at some of these older websites is important is sometimes people say, oh, I saw it on the web, or oh, this is how it used to look, or this is the person who was involved in that venture. Or people will say, oh, no, we didn't have a website back then. I don't know what you're talking about. This is a way you can do some background digging to find out what exactly was there. Now, it's a little spotty. You have to, wait on the Wayback Machine to make sure that they took a snapshot of it. But it's a good way to see what something looked like and to kind of refresh people's memory on what used to be there. This is just a website that's out there that's archived all these. If you were to use something like Google, you could go ahead and do a similar thing. But Google has its advanced search where you could do down here in your settings, you can do an advanced search. This is going to be similar to like when you do database searching. And you can pick and choose this way to find information. Okay, and then the other thing that was on the list for internet competence is an understanding of Twitter and Facebook. Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn are social media websites. They're the most visited websites out there. If Facebook was a country, it would be like the third largest country in the world. So there's a ton of people out there using Facebook for connecting with people. LinkedIn is the largest professional networking site out there. People can control their LinkedIn profile and they can put down what they want there. That's a good way to do some research and see where people have worked, who they're connected with, and that kind of thing. It's not so much that you have to use these resources if you don't want to. That's okay. But it's knowing that they're out there and how people use them or why they're using them. So for instance, Twitter, we have 140 characters to make a statement. It's like reading headlines. But Twitter is a place where a lot of people are getting news and information. So understanding how it works and what it looks like is important. Same thing for Facebook. People will document everything going on in their lives on Facebook. And if they don't adjust their privacy settings so only their friends can see that, that's open to anybody who wants to search them. Okay? So understanding that some of these social media sites that are out there aren't necessarily something you want to be using, but your clients might be using them, and understanding how they work is going to be very important to having a good conversation. I've seen many questionable things on Facebook. And like I said, LinkedIn is a really good place to see how honest somebody is. You can get a CV or a resume from somebody saying they're skilled in all these things, and you can match it up against against LinkedIn, and also find some former coworkers or managers and that kind of thing if you're looking to do some more background information on somebody. So understanding how those work is important, not that you have to use them. If you have questions on exactly how Facebook or Twitter operates, Wikipedia, once again, they have all the history of the different social media sites out there. They'll tell you who started it, how much it was started for or bought for, the different issues that they've had, and in some cases you can take a look at all the lawsuits filed against or by them, which is interesting as well. Okay, so we're going to flip the page, and I know there's a lot of stuff on here that we're not covering. We're running out of time, and there's a lot of things on here that this is kind of a working document to take a look at. But I want to cover basic data security. And this is where that foundation that we're building on how to use a computer and then how to use the internet. Well, this is basically the content that you are managing, the stuff that you're doing. This is very important. So passwords, the ability to log on and to access devices. Most people, if you have a device, you have to put a passcode in. You know, you have like a 4-digit passcode or a word you have to put in. That locks that device down to the user who knows that passcode. That's really good, and that's a feature on all the new devices, but that's not necessarily on old devices. Same thing with a computer. When you left to come here for lunch and you like turned off your monitor or you shut your lid, do you just have to turn on the monitor and everything's up on your computer? Or do you actually have to log back in? If you open up the lid on your laptop, does it show what you've been working on? Or do you have to log back in? That's the access and the log on feature. If your office isn't locked and you're working on client information on your computer and you walk away, you should always log out of what you're doing. You should always log off that computer. Your things can still stay open behind that like garage door, so to speak, so people can't get in. But you know, the cleaning crew, your neighbor down the hall, they should be able to come in and wake up your computer and see exactly what you're doing. Okay, that right there is that first step to making sure you're keeping your client information secure. Passwords, knowing your passwords, managing your passwords, and most importantly, don't use the same password for every single thing. So if you can kind of branch your life off into personal and professional, that would be a good start. So all your professional passwords should be different than all your personal passwords. So you shouldn't have the same password for your Gmail account that you do for your work account. Okay, and the password to access your building shouldn't be the same password to access your house. And it shouldn't be your spouse's name or birthday and your anniversary and your mother's maiden name, right? These are all things that we all have to give up, and they're very easy details to get a hold of. So passwords are important. Some programs are going to make you change your password every quarter. So when I was doing hiring, I had to change my password every 90 days to e-verify people. So you get in the habit of changing that password. Calendar that. Change that password every quarter. Make sure you're updating it. A good way to change your password and to remember it, because that's the hardest part when you change your password is remember it, is to go ahead and start using a phrase that you can remember it. So for me, I like to use, and I use this professionally, not personally, that's a different set of passwords, but what I use is places I visited. And that's an easy thing for me to remember. So I have a city, and I have the year, and then I can throw in the @ sign for an A, or I can throw in an exclamation point for an I. That makes it a strong password. Now, it's a password that I'm going to remember because I go, oh yeah, I remember when we went there, that was so fun. And I can go ahead and do that easy, and I can update it and remember it as I visit new cities. That's kind of my thing now. Oh, I can visit a new city and I can change my password, right? But you need to make sure that you're doing that and not sharing your password with other people in the office. I know it's a convenience thing to say, oh, here's my username and password, but that's a security breach. And only one password and username per person. No group password names, passwords and names. Now, Wi-Fi is not free Wi-Fi. This is like free, like a free kitten. It's not. It's a lot of work. There's shots and potty training and feeding it and a lot of crying, right? So when you go to the coffee shop or to the airport and you use the free Wi-Fi there, everybody else who's using the free Wi-Fi can get to your information. It's not free. So make sure when you think, oh, I'll just go work at the coffee shop, I'm just going to review these client documents, I'm just going to check my information, or I'm going to go onto the cloud and look at the client stuff. If you're using free Wi-Fi, it's not free. So some of the things you're going to want to do is set up a VPN around you so that you can access that free Wi-Fi, but you're using your own secure network, making sure that things are encrypted, because you don't want to be showing off all that information. It's basically like they're looking over your screen. Okay, and I put cloud computing part 2 on here because we've talked about cloud computing, we're talking about using Wi-Fi, and that brings up security. Like I said, free Wi-Fi is not free, making sure it's encrypted, who has access to it. So if you're going to be using cloud computing, making sure that each user has their own username and password. If it's something that you're going to share with your clients, making sure you have a client portal that's secure, that they go in and they don't get all the documents related, just the documents that they should be seeing. That then leads us into encryption. Now encryption is important, and there's encryption depending upon what type of device you're using. So there's encryption on your computer, there's encryption on emails, and a whole field is dedicated to security and encryption. The Legal Technology Resource Center has a great guide on encryption. What that means, it's basically keeping confidential information confident. I highly recommend that you review this because it's going to talk to you about what encryption is, how you're going to be using it in the office, and then it also is going to explain email encryption and give you some resources that you can go ahead and review if you're using Microsoft, if you're using other types of mail. It's going to talk about system encryption, and so this is keeping the system that you use, your office, your business, safe. So in the old days, you used to have a filing cabinet, you just want to make sure the filing cabinet was locked, right? You want to lock the office at the end of the day. Not so anymore. Your files can be accessed 24/7 by you, which is great and convenient. That means they're also available for other people to hack into 24/7. So that encryption is important. Encryption is something you want to talk about with your cloud vendor as well. This is also going to talk about mobile storage encryption. So it's the idea that the information is just not sitting out there, it's encrypted in the cloud, and when you access it, it's secure, and when you upload it, it's secure. So it's basically being cautionary. Now that's a lot of extra stuff to do, but if you set up your system up front and you're familiar with these, it's an easy thing to go, oh yeah, by the way, we need this. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. So it's about that process of keeping your data safe, your client's data safe. Encryption, like I said, is a whole nother field. We're not going to be able to get into it, but I wanted to give you this great resource because this is specific for the legal field, and it's by the Legal Technology Resource Center. Yes.
Can I just make one point?
Yes.
On encryption, I'm saying with Nebraska State Bar. We have a lot of member benefits for lawyers. Starting May 1st, we're going to have a partnership with Citrix ShareFile.
Nice.
With encrypted email. It's a great partner. I think the lowest price is like $100 a month. You set it up on your system. If you use, for example, Outlook, it's just an overlay there, so it's very easy to use. It's encrypted. It goes to your client. If you want your client to encrypt the email that goes back to you, you can do that as well. So look for that.
Awesome. That is cool. Wow, sweet. Yeah, as more and more of our technology is evolving and it's becoming sophisticated, more and more people want access to that. And in the long run, information, the data that you have is valuable. It's worth something. And so when you think of it that way, it's not, oh, it's just a bunch of paperwork. It's like, no, this data is attached to somebody, and it's expensive data, and it's important data, and we need to keep it safe. So to follow up, there are 3 areas where technology and learning intersect, and 3 areas that we all must be very diligent about, and that's going to be email security, personal devices, and using free Wi-Fi. And on the resources I gave you, there's the article about this. So lawyers must make a reasonable effort, which is Model Rule 1.6, to prevent the unauthorized access of client information. So this is a ton of information to get in like 50 minutes over lunch, I realize that. So it's more of an awareness issue. Best practices really come into play here, asking questions to find out what other people are using, what are the resources that are available to you, evaluating what you're doing in your own office, and seeing where you can adjust practices as need be, so that when you start to migrate either to the cloud or to a new system, or you update your computers, you have an idea of, okay, here's our inventory, here's what we're doing now. And as we migrate to this new system, here's what we need to do better. Now, unfortunately, the legal field has been the last adopter of technology, and so there's a lot of catch-up. That being said, there's a lot of vendors who are willing to talk to you and sell you stuff. So like Sam said, they have a really good resource out there. Talk to your colleagues, talk to the bar, find out what's out there. Always do a trial first. Ask the people that work for you, what have you seen? We have a lot of students coming out of law school who have great experience using different software, using different technologies while they were in clinic or in law school. They would be a valuable resource for you to ask about what they're familiar with. That all goes back to Model Rule 1.1 and 1.6, the competency, being aware of these basic features, the risks and the benefits associated with them, and then also making sure you have a reasonable effort that you're protecting client information. So the competence, once again, it's the ability to do something successfully or efficiently. Basically, it means being aware of what's out there and knowing how these different types of technologies operate, how to use them. So good news is you can't break the internet. I've yet to see somebody take down the internet just by, looking for videos and doing that kind of thing. YouTube is a great place to start. There's a bunch of websites that are out there. The resource list that I gave you is a resource list of websites I find very useful, but also some articles. There's a really good conversation in the legal field right now talking about what type of technology do we need? How do we know that people are competent? How do we teach this? How do we share this information? And this checklist is kind of the first draft of that, which is why it's a draft. These are things that, yeah, everybody should be able to do. They should be familiar with this. Even if you can't do it, you should know what it is. And I really like that mindset because we can't do it all. That's why we hire people to do things that they're really good at. But being aware of how something works, how it operates, that's the important part, especially when clients are coming in and they need help and they're using these different types of technology. Understanding so you can have a good conversation is really important. I also want to mention, if you like print, because I like print, even though I use the internet all the time, there's a lot of really good resources out there, and this is probably one of the better ones. This is Legal Tech News, and it's a glossy. It comes out, I think, every month. Yeah, this is the April 2016 one, and this one is all on data ethics. And there's a couple articles in here on how to contain a breach at your fingertips, and there's some on just data on who's using different types of technology and how they're using it. I highly recommend either getting on that subscription, taking a look at their website, because it's relevant every month. Here's what you need to know, and because it's a glossy, it's not so in depth, you can't get through it in your lunch break kind of thing. Very useful that way. And then once again, here's a list of all those resources. There's podcasts, there's videos if you like to watch videos. I have the Microsoft Office Support Center on there, and then a link to the Legal Technology Resource Center. They have great charts and PDFs, and they have a whole directory. If you want to buy new technology, it's like Consumer Guide for the lawyers. It's right there. Okay, we are down to 1 minute. Questions, and I will wait around if you have questions, but I want to be sensitive to our online people. So we have questions, comments, complaints. Yes, sir.
Comment just on if you are not paying $100 for a encryption system, your email over the internet is not safe because it goes through 1,000 computers before it gets to its destination. So you should be thinking about not sending things like Social Security numbers through your email unless you have an encrypted system, because people mine the internet for Social Security numbers. Things like that. Just your home internet, your home email is not secure. That's think about what you send if you don't have encryption.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if you do need to send certain sensitive things, there's file share systems that are much more secure. And they usually have a 2-week expiration date or, a 2-day. You can set it up that way. So you can share files with somebody that are encrypted, and then they download them straight to their computer. So there's other options out there. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.